Hi, welcome to Truth Wanted. I am your host, Objectively Dan, and joining me today is the Godless Iowan.
Hello.
Hi. Welcome back to another episode of our show. In case you're joining us for the first time, this is a test show for an upcoming show for the atheist community of Austin called Truth Wanted, hosted by me, Objectively Dan, where we talk about people's beliefs. We talk about what people believe and why they believe them. Every week we try to feature new guest hosts on with me, and we also try to feature calls from the community where people can call in asking about our beliefs, or they can call in talking to us about their beliefs, and we get to ask them questions. So it's a really fun time for everybody involved. We're open to just casual conversation about what people believe, and we want to make people feel welcomed while they're here. So we're open to all ideas, whether you believe there's a God, there's no God, whether you believe there's a Bigfoot or fairies or the world is flat or, whatever kinds of things you got going on, we want to talk about it. But first, we're going to talk to our guests, Godless Iowan. And while we're doing that, if you'd like to call into our show, the number there is at the bottom. That's 512-686-0279. And so we have call screeners here that will take your calls, and then we can get the show started from there. But let's talk about our guest today, Godless Iowan. What is up, my dude?
Not much. Just excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So you are a YouTube content creator, and you make videos about all kinds of stuff. I mean, what kind of stuff do you make?
I have videos about Christianity, Islam, some stuff about people like Jordan Peterson. I also have a series where I'm detailing my journey from former Pentecostal fundamentalist minister to atheist.
Yeah, and that's a really, really interesting story that I'd like to just talk about just briefly, if you don't mind. You
Sure.
are an atheist now, but you weren't always an atheist. You kind of actually were in the ministry, like went to school and served for a while, correct?
Actually, I was with a very fundamentalist Pentecostal church that did not believe in college-taught ministers. I had my license. I took a test to get it on basic theology and Pentecostal dogma. But yeah, I had my license and preached for about 10 years.
Yeah, that's wild. So, and you were, I mean, obviously you probably grew up in the Pentecostal church before that, I imagine.
Yep.
I mean, you pretty much believed your whole life. How old were you when you kind of started to change your mind?
Unfortunately, I guess I say unfortunately, but I was in my late 20s when I started to doubt. I'm in my mid 30s now, so it's been about 5 years.
Hmm. And so the conclusion you kind of came to was, I mean, did you say that there is no God, or you're just not sure, or what is your kind of take on that?
I believe that naturalism gives much better answers to any of the questions that we might have about the universe and life in general. And so I say that I don't believe in God. And I believe there are no gods.
Okay. Now, obviously, there's probably a myriad of reasons why you come to that conclusion now. And that's more than what one show could ever cover. But like, what are some of the bigger ones that you were kind of thinking about that kind of caused you to come to the conclusion that you hold now?
Basically just that the universe itself does not have a need or necessity for a creator being, or God, if you want to call it that. We have answers to basically how the expansion of the universe occurred, how molecules and all that came together, how the planets were formed, stars were formed, that do not require a God. And so with that as the basis, it seems silly that you would then have a God kind of just overseeing it. Doesn't seem needed.
So, a supernatural explanation for events has kind of been superseded by a natural one, is kind of what
Exactly.
Yeah.
Throughout the years, our gaps continue to get smaller and smaller that God fits into. even for theists out there. And so, one day maybe we'll reach a point where there are no gaps. I doubt that we're going to have I doubt that there'll be a time where there's no longer believers. But the gaps are just going to be tiny. They already are.
So what do you think would change your mind on this belief?
Well, I always like to say that I'm not sure what would change my mind. Verifiable evidence of a God would change it. And that evidence, if there were a God, he knows or she knows what that evidence would be, and they could provide it.
But you're not sure yourself about what that would look like specifically.
If we found a planet that had "God was here" written on it, that might be nice.
Okay.
But basically, if any shred of verifiable evidence for a creator being, I don't think atheism would become a silly position to hold.
Okay, but you are saying, though, that if NASA scientists tomorrow in a press conference said, yeah, we looked at the surface of Mars and it says God was here on it, that would kind of lower your confidence a little bit.
That would, yeah. If we found that, it would be much harder to say, okay, natural causes formed the letters God was here.
Okay. So it sounds like you at least have some semblance of an idea, maybe, a little bit. Like you can come up with a few examples. Yeah, okay.
Yes.
Neat. Well, cool. Thanks again for coming on the show today. And so basically, Godless Iowan is going to be joining me in answering some of your guys' phone calls. So you're free to ask questions to us about what we believe, or if you'd like, if you have a belief that you want us to talk about with you, we'd love to have that kind of conversation with you. So I think with that being said, we're going to go ahead and talk to some of our first callers. So our first one is Alexandria.
Atheist.
You're on the line. Hello, Alexandria. Can you hear us?
Yeah.
Hey, how's it going?
It's going good, thanks.
Cool. Well, what did you want to talk about today?
Actually, I called about something else, but the call screener kind of redirected me. I became an atheist about 3 years ago, and it was by watching D.M. Murdoch and Aaron Ra, or RN. I apologize to Aaron, RN. And finding out that Moses never existed. On that day, it hit me like a brick that I was being duped. So yeah. That's why I'm calling now. I had to change my topic, but that's
Sure.
Okay.
So I realized I accidentally pulled you in from the wrong line. You were still talking to one of our call screeners, and I meant to push the other button. But that's okay. You're here with us now, so let's go ahead and talk about it. So you were a God believer.
I was a Christian for 40 years, yeah.
Okay, but the kind of evidence for Moses specifically kind of changed your mind on that?
Yes.
Okay.
At that time, I had been, and I hate to admit this, it's very embarrassing, but I was a big follower of Alex Jones for about 7 months.
Don't feel too bad. I was also someone that watched Alex Jones. Yeah, so I
Well, did you spend $700 on his product?
I can't say that I did that.
Wow.
I did. He scared the living bejesus out of me.
So how recent was this?
I've been an atheist for 3 years now.
Okay.
And so it's probably been 3.5 years since I was involved with Alex Jones and his show.
Okay.
It was watching his shows that actually got me following the whole Freemasonry line and started investigating things and led me directly to atheism. I mean, I found D.M. Murdoch, and then I found Aaron Ra, and then I found the Atheist Experience and Seth Andrews, and it was a snowball effect. So ultimately, I could actually credit Alex Jones for my being an atheist now.
Wow. Not many people can say that. That's interesting. Wow.
Right. I was following what all this stuff. It was really the Freemasonry and all of his talk about that.
So what was it about so just that the Freemasons were atheists and that kind of interested you?
No, actually, it was him talking about, there's a lot of Freemasonry here in Michigan.
Mm-hmm.
And the church that I was attending, Woodside Bible Church in Troy, Michigan, has a lot of Freemasons in it. And it just made me curious. I was like, what the heck? So I started looking into it. I'm like, this is really weird and dark stuff. And I don't know how it happened, but I just came across a DM Murdoch video talking about Moses. And not long after that, I fell into an Aaron Ra video of the same topic and pretty much the same information. It was great, but it was devastating at the same time to realize that I had been lied to my entire life.
Would you describe your Christianity as like evangelical, or is there a specific denomination?
I was a pretty hardcore Christian.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what was it, do you think, about Alex Jones and these other people in particular that kind of piqued your interest? I mean, because I noticed, of course, a correlation between evangelical Christianity and Alex Jones. Like, I definitely see the connection, but what do you think that was for you? Why do you think that was appealing?
Actually, it wasn't. A friend of mine, and I'll be honest, they were over here smoking a joint, and they said, I got something to show you. And they took me to Alex Jones's channel. And he was talking about the school, Sandy Hook.
Mm.
And I was absolutely floored. And I fell hook, line, and sinker, face first into that. And for about 6 months, I believed everything he said. I didn't know. I really thought that if he was lying, he would be charged with slander or something. Somebody was.
Oh, yeah.
I think something would happen if he had been lying. He wouldn't be allowed to be doing it, you know?
You would
I
think.
was unaware at the time. I was very uneducated when it came to the internet. I did not know. I had just learned how to use it. And I seriously thought YouTube was just for music. And when I would ask my Christian friends to teach me how to use it, none of them would. And now I know why.
Yeah, kind of conflicting information.
It was I think they knew that eventually I was going to start looking for the truth. I had already started expressing doubts due to their behavior and not following the Bible like they were supposed to be, you know, judging me for things that were supposedly not Christian, but they were doing things that weren't Christian too. So I was already kind of thinking about it and not understanding why so many people say they're Christian, but they're not acting according to the Bible. Mm-hmm. So I don't think it was too much of a leap for me to become an atheist once I started looking into things.
Mm-hmm. So let me ask you, because that's a very unique story that you have. And I think that's wonderful that you get to share it on this show. And I want to know, because you kind of told us what was getting you away from Christianity, but what was getting you away from these kind of conspiracy theories? Like this, you know, kind of the stuff Alex Jones usually promotes. What was the...
There was a video by David Icke and Stefan Molyneux that pretty much said you're being duped. And I watched that and I was like, wait a minute, what? This doesn't make any sense. Why are they... And it had Alex Jones's name in the title as well. But it was kind of like opened my eyes to the fact that I was being lied to. So, and I don't know how it was, I don't even know how it was all, I don't know if you've heard the term falling down the rabbit hole.
Yeah, for sure.
I was watching a lot of videos and it was all just pouring into my brain like water being turned on. I was watching as much stuff as I could, and I came across that video, and I remember them saying, you're being duped, you're being lied to. I think when I became an atheist is when I figured it out, like, oh, I get it.
Now,
they're fucking with people. Pardon my French.
that's all right. So, Godless Iowan, in your experience in the Pentecostal church, is this a common phenomenon? This kind of connection between, these Alex Jones kind of conspiracies and like evangelical Christianity? I mean, was that part of your experience, or?
I would definitely say so. Alex Jones, people like Jack Van Impe, if you know who that is.
Yeah, he's from Detroit, Michigan.
Yeah, very much conspiracy minded. And it falls right in line with people that are constantly waiting for the end of the world to occur. It was interesting that she mentioned Arn Ra, because Arn Ra is the person that completely destroyed my belief in creationism. I got out of the church. I was still a creationist. I considered myself an old earth creationist, but by watching his videos, that completely went away. And, I completely understand the issue that you had once you found that Moses, and to go back, Abraham, those characters are just characters in a story. Because that leads you down the line of, then you look at the Gospels. Well, the Gospels are said to be by Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and yet none of that is actually true. They were just names associated with the books. And so once you realize that you've been lied to for so many years, it's easy for it all to fall apart.
Yeah, mine did in one day. As soon as I accepted that Moses never existed, the rest of it fell like dominoes. It was all in one day. Everything was a lie. And I have the added burden of, I've also placed 4 children for adoption into Christian homes while I was a Christian. The youngest one just turned 4. And, hearing it's an open adoption, and we went to visit him this summer. And hearing his new parents talk about him going to church, I just cringed. And it was it's so heavy to know that I've placed 4 children into a cult. Mm-hmm. And that's the worst part of it. If I could go back and undo that, I would. It makes me wish I had a magic eraser.
Well, it's good that you recognize that now, because there's a lot of people that never do,
Yeah, I get that.
It's never too late. Yeah. And I'm constantly, people are always saying, oh, wow, atheist is it's this young people's thing. It's this new thing that millennials are doing and all these younger people, because they're rebelling against the church. But, I hear stories like yours all the time, where it's people who have already had kids, people who have had grandkids even, who are kind of experiencing this doubt. And that can be really lonesome and really, isolating in a sense. So before we go, I'm kind of curious if you could just tell us about your experience of what it's been like since you've changed your beliefs. How has that affected the way that you do things? Has there been any change in your life like that?
Absolutely. I feel free. Even though my husband and I have separated a little over a year ago, but I'm grateful for that. Like, I don't know how to explain it. Like, I'm no longer looking to an outside force to fix me. I'm no longer waiting for change to happen. Like, I guess I always waited for God to fix things, or God to fix me, or whatever was wrong with me. And that has stopped. I now recognize that I control my behavior. I control my thoughts. The whole free will idea with Sam Harris threw a whole new ballgame for me. It opened up my eyes to the power I have over my own behavior in a way that I had never, ever considered before.
Wow.
Like, I really do have the ability to control my behavior. I may not be able to control my mouth all the time, but I can control my behavior. And it's just a whole new way of thinking, a whole new way of looking at things. But I still have a great deal of anger and rage towards religion, especially the Catholic Church. Finding out that they actually are responsible for the Bible didn't set well with me. I mean, they literally wrote the King James Bible. So I have a great deal of anger towards the Catholic Church, and I can't stand Catholics. I don't like Jesus freaks either, especially when I see them out there preaching but not following what they're preaching. As a Christian, I tried very, very hard to follow the Bible. And I would get very annoyed with other Christians that didn't. It really stumped my brain. Like, I could not figure it out. Now I understand that I truly think most of them don't believe. They're just pretending. Because if they truly believed, they would be following the Bible. You know, like public prayer. The Bible says do not pray in public. And yet they're trying to force public prayer down people's throats.
Isn't that odd?
So it is odd. And those are the things that made me question things in the very beginning, even as a Christian still. I could not figure that out. Now I figured it out. They know it's all bullshit. So I see people that aren't following the Bible as liars. They say they're Christian, but they're not. You can't be a Christian and not follow the Bible. It makes no sense. So it's starting to make me understand why atheism is growing and why the lack of belief is growing. Because the rest of the world is looking at this going, wait a minute, you say you believe in this, but you're not acting like you believe it.
Yeah. Well, Alexandria, I'm really glad that you found a peace of mind through all this, and I wish you well.
Yes.
And I hope that you continue to be skeptical and continue to ask questions to people.
I will.
Yeah, and definitely share that attitude with other people. Thanks for calling.
Thank you. Have a great one, guys.
All right. That was a great conversation. What'd you
Yeah,
think?
I empathize with her so much when it comes to the kids issue because my oldest two kids were raised in the church when I was a minister. And so they were taught the fundamentalist stuff, and I have a lot of regrets over that. But the thing that I could say to Alexandria is that put in the same situation now, I'm pretty sure she wouldn't do it. You know, that option would not happen again. So, you know, take heart and be strong in that idea.
Yeah. Well, we're going to go on to our next caller. And this is Jenny. Hello, Jenny. Can you hear us?
I can, yeah.
Hi, Jenny. I have a note here saying that you are a Christian and you wanted to call in and kind of talk to us about that.
Yes, I got your number from my brother, and I don't know what this is about. He just said to call. But my concern is I heard the last caller, and I want to make sure that this isn't some kind of trick.
Well, I don't think we're a trick. No. This is my new show. Here,
you're not going to try to get me to, like, say something sinful or anything?
Well, that depends on your definition of sinful, honestly. It really does. But this is a show about...
against the Bible.
Well, this is a show about exploring people's beliefs. And so it doesn't have to be Christian. You could be a Muslim. You could be a Hindu. You could believe in Bigfoot. You can believe in fairies, whatever. We're just kind of here to talk about that a little bit and kind of share our experiences and stuff. And so, yeah, that's really all that we're here for.
Okay.
Yeah. Is that okay with you?
I think so.
Okay, cool. Well, first tell us about yourself. So you are a Christian. Do you have a specific denomination?
I grew up in Pentecostal church all my life. So I've been in that faith. Jesus is the one true, way to heaven. I've been that way since I was born.
Awesome. Cool. So you kind of grew up Christian, you kind of grew up Pentecostal specifically. Was there a particular, what would you say is your biggest reason as to why you are a Christian?
Well, I would say that I rely a lot on my Bible for my reasons to get through different things in life. And Matthew 19:26 says that with man anything is impossible, but with God all things are possible. So I try to live by those kinds of things and say I'm just a mere person, but with God I can be better.
So your belief kind of comes from a reliance on God and that knowing that He can make you better. Is that kind of right, or?
Well, I mean, everyone's sinful, right? So if you're not living for God, then you're living for man, or you're even worse, you're living for Satan. And you want to be a good person, I would assume.
Mm-hmm. I'm kind of wondering how you came to the conclusion that there is a God.
Well, mainly through, studying the Bible, going to church, listening to my preacher.
Okay, cool. Godless Iowan, do you want to ask a few questions?
Well, I'd like to ask, because I was a former Pentecostal as well. What makes you think that Pentecostals get it right?
I would say probably because, you just know that you're in the presence of God when you're there in the services and you're, feeling the congregation just come together and you can feel His presence.
Would you say that Baptists and Methodists, Episcopals, they don't feel a presence of God in their services?
I'm not saying Pentecostal is the only way to go. I think there are some other ones that are okay, but I think there's a lot more that aren't.
So do you realize that the Pentecostal faith is only about 100 years old, and prior to that there was no Pentecostalism?
There probably, I don't know that, but I would say there probably was a version of it or something, because it would make no sense then if it wasn't as old as the church, the church itself being the Church of Jesus.
See, one of the big things with Pentecostalism is the speaking in tongues. And in the Bible, the speaking in tongues that they're talking about is something known as xenolalia, which is speaking in other languages. But the speaking in tongues that's done in Pentecostal churches is known as glossolalia, which is basically just speaking in syllables. And that did not exist until the Pentecostal church came about 100 years ago with the Azusa Street revivals.
So you're thinking that there was no speaking in tongues prior to that?
Well, not the glossolalia version. The speaking in tongues, according to the Bible, is a speaking in another language. Like when you look at the book of Acts 2, when they're speaking in tongues, they're actually speaking in other languages that people around them are saying, how do they know my language? That does not happen in Pentecostal churches now. When you hear a message in tongues, you're not hearing another actual language.
Correct. Only the angels and God can understand it.
Let me pipe in here for a sec.
Okay.
If we, we talk about the glossolalia and the speaking in tongues. In my Christianity, we didn't have that. I kind of grew up in kind of a Methodist/Baptist tradition between my parents, and that wasn't really something that I experienced. So I really don't have as much experience with that area. But if we could determine that there was a natural explanation for why these speaking in tongues happen, or why these personal feelings of the presence of God happen while we're in worship, would that change your confidence at all in your belief in God?
I'm not sure I understand your question.
Sure.
What do you mean by natural explanation?
If we were to say, explain that what you were experiencing, and again, I'm not saying that I'm able to do this or that anyone is able to do this, but if someone were to show you some charts and some scans from an MRI scanner saying, look, whenever you're in church and you're doing these things, these brain states are happening because this is something that's self-inflicted when you're in a group setting, and there's a lot of excitement, and you kind of put yourself into these states where you experience these, experiences. If an authority, maybe a scientific authority, were to kind of give you that kind of evidence, would that change your belief in God at all?
Okay, I would have two comments to
Okay,
that.
sure.
My first one would be that I would think that God caused it to happen on those other scans too.
Okay.
And then my second one would be if someone was trying to convince me that God isn't real from scans, I would think that he was being unduly influenced by the devil.
Okay.
Okay.
Interesting.
So what evidence could be provided that would make you question?
That's a really good question.
Because
it's really
ahead.
hard
Go
to
ahead.
answer that question because I haven't ever encountered anything yet that makes me question God.
Okay. So with that in mind, I'm a former Pentecostal pastor. I know the exact feelings that you're talking about that you get in your services. And I can tell you that right now, I could start speaking in tongues and have those exact same feelings exhibit in my brain and have that feel-good feeling hit me. Now, the Bible teaches that the Holy Spirit cannot dwell in an unclean temple. I'm an atheist. So would that make you question?
I'm hearing you speak in tongues. Is that what you're asking?
I'm saying I myself am just one person, but I'm a member of what's known as the Clergy Project. And I know several former Pentecostal pastors, and we can all speak in tongues the exact same as we did when we were ministers, and we're all atheists now.
I mean, speaking in tongues is a gift, so I don't think that alone would convince me of anything. I mean, because you can fake it, and I'm not saying you would, but
Sure.
Someone could fake it, and I also don't think that once you learn it, I'm going to try to rephrase this. Once you learn how to do it, and once you've received it, then you know what it feels like, right? So you could recreate that again, even after you turned your back on God.
So, Jenny, I think you pointed out something really important in that these kinds of experiences or this speaking in tongues action can be faked. I mean, if that's true, doesn't that mean, or does it mean, rather, that as evidence for God, it should be under suspect, or maybe it's not the most reliable evidence that we have that a God exists?
I don't believe I have any evidence. I mean, I don't think that on this particular topic that there's sufficient evidence to convince any certain person.
But you, if I may ask, though, you are convinced that there is a God.
Yes.
So I guess the purpose of me asking these questions is really trying to get down to what is it that's convincing you that should be convincing us that there is a God?
Well, I'm not trying to convince you, though. I'm just trying to tell you, like, okay, what I was told was to call and say what I believe.
Sure, yeah.
So I'm not trying to convince you. I mean, that's your choice.
Yeah. And let me be clear.
But I will hope that you come to pray and accept, but
I appreciate that.
I'm not trying to convince you.
Yeah. And maybe I misworded that. You don't have to convince us of anything if you don't want to.
Oh, good, because I'm not good at debate.
Yeah, sure. What I'm more getting at is I want to know what convinces you. So I want to know what you find personally convincing that your belief is true, and I want to know the reasons why.
Okay, so I mean, I've kind of brought up the presence that you can feel. That's one thing. The sense of peace that you feel when you pray. Reading the scripture, and even more so when it's read to you by a man of the cloth, a man of God. When they're up there and they're preaching it, and they're just really making you feel like this is got to be from Him. And also, a lot of it is like just when you have no one else to hear you, He's always there.
Wow. Okay, so you list out like 5 different reasons, which is great for us to talk about.
Was that too many?
No. That's fantastic, because, these are the reasons why you believe, so we want to talk about those reasons. I think Godless Iowan was wanting to ask you about one of those reasons, right?
Well, once again, you mentioned the feeling that you get in prayer and in services and things along those lines. You do know
prayer is a much different feeling to me than the one when you're praying in church. Or when you're in church, there's a different feeling. I don't want you to misunderstand.
Oh no, I understand.
Okay.
I totally get what you're saying with that. I had different feelings when I was a minister, but there's a possibility that we end this call and the next call we go to is a Muslim man, and he could say the exact same thing about his experiences. Muslims feel a sense of peace when in prayer. Muslims feel a sense of awe when they're in their temples. So what differentiates between the Christian God and the Muslim God? What makes you sure that you've picked the right God?
Well, I would say that it's probably because Jesus died for us. And I don't believe that happened in the Muslim faith.
Why did God need a human sacrifice in order for His plan to go?
Can I reroute this a little bit?
You can. Yes.
Only because I'd rather not talk about theology too much. I'd rather just get on to kind of what she believes already. So, Jenny, thanks again for calling, by the way. I really appreciate it. I hope you're having a good time here.
Still a little bit scared.
Yeah. What's making you scared?
Well, my parents always taught me that you don't question it. So I kind of feel like I'm doing something a little bit wrong.
Yeah.
When I'm trying to discuss it like it's not real, or trying to justify it. Let's put it that way.
Well, why do you think they asked you not to question it?
Because it's a sin.
But why do you think it's a sin?
It's like doubting God.
Yeah. Do you think doubting God is a sin?
Is it one of the 10 Commandments? No. But is it wrong to doubt them? I believe so. Yes. That's how I was taught.
Is there any other belief that you hold that you would consider it's sinful or wrong to doubt outside of God? Like if you didn't believe, I don't know, is there any other belief that you can come up with besides a belief in God where you feel like doubting would make you uncomfortable in the same way?
Can you give me an example?
Well, so it's kind of hard because I don't know.
What you mean.
Yeah, so I'll tell you this because my point in asking this question, I'll get straight to it, is if you don't hold the same kind of fears about doubting your belief that your car is going to work, or that the sun is rising tomorrow, or that your family loves you, why is the belief in God cause you so much anxiety? Why would this be a sin and not a doubt in something else?
Well, those other things aren't important, really.
Well,
They're not
Jenny.
really faith-based.
Do you think there's a separate? Sorry, Godless, I keep interrupting you.
You're okay.
Like starting my car. Well, I've got the keys. I got gas in it. The battery works. I know it's going to start.
Yeah.
Jenny, I'd like to ask you about a biblical passage. When Jesus appeared to his disciples and Thomas doubted, was Thomas called a sinner in that situation? No, he was blessed.
Thomas.
But he was said, it says, blessed are you because you've seen. And Thomas was doubting. So by that passage, can we take doubting as being a sin?
I think because he was in the presence of God himself, he was given
Wouldn't that be even more?
Privileges.
But if Jesus was standing before him and he was still doubting, wouldn't that be worse than doubting when you don't have Jesus standing right before you?
See, the way I would take that is to say that he was allowed to, because Jesus was trying to show how he was forgiving and he was loving to the people who were witnesses. And I don't think that means everyone can doubt him.
Well, I would like for you to go through the New Testament and find scriptures where it says don't doubt. If you can find that, definitely look me up on Twitter and send them to me, because I would.
Twitter.
Well, you can reach me on, if you have Facebook. I have a Godless Iowan page. I'm pretty easy to reach out.
I have Facebook.
But yeah, that's what I would say. Just go through and look through the scriptures to see if it actually teaches that doubting is a sin.
But I mean, don't we have to have faith in God? Like don't we have to say that we have that? Because if you don't have the faith, then you have doubt.
Yeah, but what's wrong with doubt?
Well, if you doubt, then you're basically saying that you think there's a part of you that doesn't believe in him.
Jenny, neither Godless Iowan or I believe in God.
I kind of understood that from the previous caller, which is why I didn't really.
But you know that I did.
Right, but
I'm sorry.
I did believe. I was very devout Pentecostal pastor for a decade. So I understand your struggle. I was taught that doubt is a sin as well. But going through the scriptures, I could not find that. Now you can find scriptures that say don't doubt, but it's never called out as a sin. It's never once said you can't doubt, because God is supposed to be a parent where we can question.
In the Bible, when you're told not to do something and it's not listed as a sin, it doesn't mean that you can just go and do it because it doesn't specifically say, "Oh, this is a sin."
I hear you on that, but there are many stories.
I believe it's in James where it says something like, you must believe and not doubt.
It says in the scriptures, don't doubt, but it doesn't call them a sin, because there's also passages in the Bible numerous times where believers would ask God for signs to prove that he was really sending them on this, wanting them to do something.
Yeah, but here's the thing, because it says plainly that the person that doubts should not expect to receive anything from the Lord, and that a person who says so is double-minded and unstable.
I'm unsure of the scripture that you're talking about there.
I can look it up. Hold just one second. I got my Bible here.
Well, we can. I think we're gonna have to move on to some other callers now. Actually,
okay.
But Jenny, this was a great conversation. I hope you enjoyed talking to us. Are you on Facebook at all?
Yes.
Okay.
I have Facebook.
If you want to continue having a conversation with me or some other people, I have a Facebook page for this show. It's called Truth Wanted, and you're more than happy to join if you want. And it's just a community of really like-minded people that really just like having conversations like this. We're not going to judge you. We all come from very different backgrounds.
Yeah.
And if you want to talk to us on there, I'd love to keep talking to you about this. And if not, that's cool. But thanks again for calling either way. I really appreciate it.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, have a great day.
You, Jenny.
Yeah, that was really, really interesting. I really wanted to talk a little bit more about why she feared so much having these questions. What was causing that?
Well, I think it was pretty clear that she was told, if you doubt, you're sinful and going to hell. So that puts a lot of fear, and there is a deep fear in the Pentecostal church. Pentecostals do not teach like some other faiths do that once you get saved, you're good. They teach that even a single sin that you didn't realize you committed could keep you out of heaven. So there is constant prayer for forgiveness of sins in Pentecostal churches. You constantly are told that you're nothing without God and that you're a wretched being. And so there's fear driven into you from the very youngest of ages in Pentecostal churches. I know the feeling that she experienced there because I had that same feeling when I started doubting myself.
Yeah. I don't like people being afraid to talk about things.
Yeah.
To me, that says that there's something wrong across the board when people aren't allowed to, have conversations about these things. I think if something is true, you should be able to demonstrate that it's true without fearing that it's not true. And even now, if I was convinced that there was a God somehow, I shouldn't be afraid of that prospect. I should try to make myself open to that because I want to believe true things. So
I totally agree with you there.
Yeah.
And, I liked where you brought up if there was any other situation where she would be that fearful of doubt. Because if I were to say, Dan, I have $1 million I'm sending to you next week. Go ahead and buy a house this week because it's coming. You would probably go, no, I think I'll hold off.
Yeah.
And you wouldn't fear that.
Yeah. We have another caller coming up. This is Duncan from Texas. And you wanted to ask us, hey, how's it going? I have a note here saying you wanted to ask us for the basis of our belief in atheism. Is that right?
Yeah, I'm just wondering what the rational basis for atheism is, whether you define it as the denial of the existence of God or lack of belief. If you lack belief in God, what is it then that ultimately exists that would tie everything together and be a basis for rationality? What would be the impersonal ultimate that would exist that would replace God?
Well, this isn't Matt Slick, is it?
No.
Okay. So
I'm not Matt.
Sorry, say again?
I said I'm not Matt Slick.
Okay, cool. Just making sure. Because if you are, then lying is a sin. I'll just let you know.
I'm not. I'm not.
Do you know who Matt Slick is?
Yeah, I've seen him on YouTube many times.
Okay. Well, I think that's an interesting question. I don't know if atheism is the rationality or the basis for my rationality. I think if it was, then I'd have to justify that, but it's not. So
no. Well, what ultimately exists? Since you lack belief in God, you must have a belief that something is ultimate or absolute.
Why do I need
Why?
Why do I need to have a belief in something ultimate?
Well, then what would be the basis for your belief in any states of affairs, including reason? What prerequisites would exist for your capacity to reason or have epistemology?
I don't know if I need a prerequisite for reason. I think everyone has it. I mean, obviously reason.
Your brain isn't the prerequisite for reason?
Well, I mean, I need a brain to reason things.
Yeah.
And does your brain operate in terms of causality and laws of nature, and do they exist?
From what I can observe. Yeah, it seems.
Can you observe causality?
Can I observe causality? I can observe events happening and then other events happening.
Right, but I'm just saying the causal principle.
What do you mean?
You observe that there are causal relations between events? Because if you can't account for causality, then how are you going to account for reason? Since you require justification for God, then if matter, energy, causality, and laws of nature replace God as the basis for you to reason, how do you account for causality and laws of nature? Because you can't appeal to sense perception, because that presupposes
why do I have to
causality.
account? Are you saying account as in I have to prove that causes exist? Because
is causality and laws of nature a prerequisite to reason and have epistemology?
You do realize laws of nature were made by our reason. They describe how things work.
Yeah, I'm saying, do they exist?
They're descriptions of how things work.
Okay, but are there laws of nature, and are there causal connections between events that would be a prerequisite for your capacity to reason and have epistemology?
There are descriptions for how things work that we came up with our reason and our intellects to describe the world in which we live. I don't see why we have to have a precept ultimate source of any of this. Atheism is the answer to a single question.
Yeah, but when you have your atheism, you lack belief in God because God's not rationally justified, right?
I don't have atheism. That I am an atheist, but that's the answer to a single question.
You lack belief in God. You lack belief in God through the process of reason. What ultimately exists that provides for your capacity to reason? Is it laws of nature?
I don't.
You have blind faith.
Well, faith. I mean, I think that's an equivocation because I'm using reason to come to my conclusions.
So, I understand that you're using reason.
Yeah.
I'm just simply saying to you, how do you account for the prerequisites that you are reasoning?
How do I account that well, okay, so I think are you trying to say how do I account that my reasoning is accurate?
Yeah, I just want to see if you actually have a reliable method to be able to reason. Do the prerequisites for reason exist in order for...
are there like axioms that I accept? Maybe. Is that what you're asking?
Are those axioms adopted by blind faith, or are they have a justification?
Yeah, so it depends because I think different people adopt different axioms depending on what kind of atheist you ask.
Well, what about you? Are your most bottom basic beliefs adopted by blind faith about the nature of reality, or do you have a justification for it? Because you insist that God has to have a rational justification, right?
To hold a belief in God, not necessarily that God exists. It's two different things, in my opinion. Yeah. Because I don't know ultimate truth or whatever. I know how to justify my beliefs in order to accurately accommodate them with reality, at least the reality that I perceive it. So
the prerequisites for reason, such as causality and laws of nature, do exist?
The prerequisites, okay, that's a lot. Okay, can you repeat that a little more slowly so that I can understand?
Do the prerequisites of reason, such as causality and laws of nature, actually exist in order for you to be able to reason and have epistemology?
I mean, we observe them through reason. So, I don't know.
Reason is not sense perception.
Yeah, but we have to reason that they exist through our observations.
Well, you can't appeal to sense perception to justify causality and laws of nature because sense perception entails causality and laws of nature in order to be a meaningful concept. That would be begging the question. So you can't appeal to something that presupposes causality and laws of nature in order to justify laws of nature. So as an atheist, since you lack belief in God, you must believe in something that ultimately exists that makes God unnecessary, such as matter, energy, causality, and laws of nature. So what's your justification for that?
No,
disagree.
And is this Darth Dawkins?
I do use that name, yes.
There you go.
Yes, that's what I thought.
Cool.
Yeah, do you have a justification for that, gentlemen?
I disagree with the premise.
Yeah, the premises are garbage.
You disagree that reason has the prerequisites of causality and laws of nature?
I think you don't understand what laws of nature are.
Okay, well, the question I'm asking you, gentlemen, is since reason requires certain prerequisites that nature operate in a certain way, otherwise you wouldn't have the capacity to reason.
They don't require that they
don't.
We know the reason why we can justify that they do is because we're using reason. Okay,
Yes.
we don't, accept that to be true a priori. We're having to use our reason to come to those conclusions. I think you're getting it backwards. You can't call that a prerequisite because we're using reason to figure that out.
By our reason, we describe how things happen, and we call those the laws of nature.
Yeah, they're descriptions that we use our reason for.
Right.
If our observations told us something else, that there weren't causes, that things just happened randomly, then we would.
How do you know things aren't happening randomly?
Well, my sense perceptions don't tell me that they are.
No, you can't. You see, you wouldn't be able to. How would you be able to distinguish between a random chance world where events are spontaneous, producing the same kinds of consistency as necessity? How would you be able to know the difference?
What would be the difference?
Yeah.
That's what I'm asking you.
No, I'm saying, like, even if it was random and everything worked exactly the same way it is, then what does random even mean?
Well, if all events were random and spontaneous, would you have the capacity to reason? No. So you must presuppose there's laws of nature and causality. Do you have?
No, I would have to presuppose.
No, because how did you figure that out? You used your reason to figure that out. So you're using reason to do that. There's no.
I'm just asking how you account for it.
That's how I account for it. I use my reason.
Yes, we use our reason.
Yeah.
Right. So you're saying I reason, therefore I reason?
No.
Is that what you're saying?
No.
When did I say that? No.
I'm asking you.
What does that even mean?
So what I'm asking you is reason has prerequisites.
No.
If God.
No, it doesn't.
God, can I finish my statement, please? If you lack belief in God as the ultimate prerequisite for reason, then something else must ultimately exist, such as matter, energy, causality, and laws of nature, to provide a foundation for you to have reason and epistemology. And I want to see if you can account for the prerequisites of your claim to reason.
Okay.
Can you justify that there are laws of nature?
First of all, God is not a reason for reasons. It doesn't. There's
in certain worldviews, God would be
no. The existence of a God does not confirm that you know things about reality. In no way does that make sense.
What I'm simply saying is, in certain models of worldview, such as the Christian worldview, which I hold to, God would be the ultimacy of reality, which is the ultimate prerequisite for everything, including reason. Since you lack belief,
are you a reformed epistemologist, or are you just a typical, like, what is your?
I'm a Bible believing Christian, sir. Now,
he's an internet
I'm
troll,
no, well, what your specific worldview though, because there's like millions and millions and millions of Christians that disagree with what you just said.
I'm a Bible believing Christian. I believe that the Bible is literal from Genesis to Revelation. Now, can I get back to my question?
Well, because Christianity.
Can I get back? Yeah, I understand that, but my question is about how do you account for your capacity to?
And I gave you my reason, and you have rejected it.
May I finish my question? In your worldview, something must ultimately exist as a foundation and a prerequisite that provides the correct.
So this is the fifth time you've said this, and again, I reject your premise.
Yes.
What do you?
No.
My answer is null.
So there's no ultimate. Oh, there's no absolute in existence that provides a foundation for reason.
No absolute. I don't know what that means.
How would we know what an absolute?
Yeah,
is?
we don't have the ability to tell.
Let me put it this way. I'm sure you agree that all assertions or propositions require context. So when you make assertions about reason, what's the ultimate or absolute context of reality that provides the meaning for your capacity to assert
don't
reason?
Have one.
No.
Nobody has that ability.
If you don't have one, then how do you know you can reason?
No, it's not that I don't know I can reason. See, that's where you messed up. Okay, I never said I couldn't reason. My reasoning could be faulty, but that doesn't mean I can't reason. You see the difference? I could reason false conclusions. I could, that is possible, but you can't say I can't.
Dan, can I just tell you something? This is Darth Dawkins.
I know
he has been trying for
I'm aware.
months to get on my channel with me in a chat for just this reason. It never gets better.
I'm not sure what you're even talking about trying to get on your channel. What are you referring to, sir?
You have been in my chat countless times asking to join.
I'm not sure what you're referring to. I sent you one message, I think, asking if you wanted to have a dialogue. Just one message, sir.
No.
How does one message equal countless times?
My reason.
I sent you one direct message, sir.
All right. Well, regardless.
Anyway, but that's changing the subject. So the point on what I want to say is, since you lack belief in God, if you have no foundation in terms of your worldview, I
do have a foundation.
Then how is your reason meaningful?
I do have a foundation.
What is it?
Why are you saying that I don't? I do.
What is it?
My sensory perceptions of the world and my reasoning abilities are my foundation. No, they're not ultimate. They're not ultimate, and I'm not making the claim that they are.
No.
Sensory.
I don't need ultimate.
Not be the ultimate foundation. You're going to need a bottom level foundation about what the nature of existence is in order to claim that you can have possession of reason. And what is it?
No, because first of all, you're assuming I'd have to have a foundation in order to come to that conclusion anyway. So it kind of defeats the purpose.
So do you believe in that foundation that provides you the capacity to reason by faith or by evidence?
Gosh,
no.
We've gone through this several times, and I've seen you talk about this with other people. I'm not really interested in having this conversation because I don't think that it's meaningful, and I don't think it's simple either.
It's not.
I think that this is.
Why? Because you can't answer the question. Do you use?
No, actually, I've answered it several times, and other people have answered as well.
Well, is it by blind faith or by evidence that the foundation is there? And what is that foundation?
It's by neither. I've already told you. It's my sensory experiences and my reason.
No, your
that I make claims about my perception of reality.
Are not your sensory apparatus, are they not contingent upon prerequisites?
Okay, so we kind of talked about this before, but I'm interested in what you mean by prerequisites. So you're saying that I have to assume a priori that the world works in specific causes. Which I disagree. I think that I can still use my reasoning abilities and I would still be able to tell, because we can tell things about, supposedly, there are quantum events that happen that don't happen on a cause effect basis, and we're using our reasoning to come to those conclusions that might be the case.
Not really addressing my question. What I'm getting at is what is it that exists that provides for the capacity to reason? Is it the way nature operates? Does nature, the way it operates, provide the foundation for you to reason about anything as an atheist? And is the way nature operates, is that causality and laws of nature? Is that what exists as the foundation?
Those aren't my foundations. Okay. Thank you for calling. I really do appreciate you calling. And maybe
so you don't want to answer the question, huh?
I've answered the question several times, and I have other callers that I like to talk to because we're going around in circles.
I haven't answered the question. You've just talked around it. You haven't answered it in the least. But I would
answer
how many Darth, how many times have I told you what my foundations are?
I didn't hear what your foundation is.
You didn't hear my Hey, Godless Iowan, what are my foundations? Please tell me. As I know you heard.
You said it was sense perception, but sense perception.
Yes,
Okay, so you did hear. Okay, so you lied. Okay, so there's one.
No, I'm not
You did actually hear what I said. What you meant to say was it wasn't a satisfactory answer for you because it didn't go through your routes of conversation that you've already had planned out. Okay, I'm done with this conversation. Thank you for calling, Darth. Have a nice day. Okay,
And-
look, if
wow.
you're a presuppositionalist and you want to have a conversation with me, I'd love to talk to you. But if you're not going to treat me with the respect that I deserve or my co-hosts deserve in our intellectual capacity to understand what you mean and to think that we haven't studied these issues for several years and have done the work in figuring out what we believe and why we believe, if you doubt that, then it's not worth talking to us. Go talk to somebody who you can fool more easily. Because I'm done with that. I'm not going to be tricked into Christianity because you think you have some sort of special proof that if only the atheist mind understood that somehow he'd be a Bible-believing Christian and start telling gay people they're going to go to hell or some stupid nonsense like that. Okay, I'm not there for this.
I don't know, Dan. If he would have said laws of nature one more time, I might have reconverted.
Maybe so. That's fine.
I mean, it was close. No. Oh.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that was fun. Let's go ahead and go to our next caller. So next caller, I have your name here as Frustrated. Is that right?
Yes, it is.
Okay. What's up?
Not much, but the very second he admitted to being Darth Dawkins, I would have definitely just hung up on him.
Oh.
Well, I want to give people the chance that they deserve. And I think I gave him a chance.
Yeah, you did.
I don't know.
And I got to say, I commend you for that because I would have not have been as patient. The very second he started doing that, I've been like, wait, are you Darth Dawkins? And he said, yes, I am. Click.
And yeah, he definitely has been in my chat numerous times, constantly trying to get into chats. And it's just, that's the exact argument that he gives every single time.
Yeah. Yes, I know this, Iowan.
Well, so what did you want to talk about today?
Well, I was really kind of pressured in here by the always lovely Mrs. Snarky, who told me that I should definitely call, and I had no idea what to call about. So when I called, I guess I told I don't know exactly what he put down because I said either one of the two responses that he gave me was fine.
Okay.
So what did he put down?
It says how you came to no longer believe.
Yes. I am a frustrated atheist on YouTube. I am indeed an atheist, and I became so due to a long period of time. It took from about I'd say somewhere around 10, 11, all the way up until I was about 25 to finally come to grips that I'm an atheist.
Okay.
And it was a very, very long and stubborn journey on my behalf. But it had lots of little cracks, and I've said it before, and it's a very long story, so I'm going to try to give the condensed version here. I was raised a Southern Baptist here, of course, in the state of Texas. And we were, I was brought up believing that God, exists, and that Jesus was a real person, and that that you had to go to church, you had to believe. There was no other option. And I started having doubt at a young age, but kept because of, like it's been mentioned before, kept being afraid of these doubts because it wasn't something that was really okay in growing up. you had to believe, and you could have doubts, but you had to just turn to the Word of God or listen to, whoever's telling you about the Word of God or telling you about God. Just listen to them and have faith, and you'll be okay. And so every time I had the serious doubt, I got really terrified.
Mm-hmm.
And I would just go back to, oh, nope, I just have to have faith. I'm good. And eventually, I was 11, and I started reading the Harry Potter books, and my aunt, who was homeschooling us at the time, was the reason why we were going to church. And we actually learned like what we're supposed to, because every year we'd go to Austin and take a test to make sure that we were learning what we should be learning. But of course, since she was homeschooled, she had a Bible study type of thing. And one day I had the Harry Potter book on my desk that I was reading at the time, and she just so happens to talk about witches and witchcraft that day. Don't know where that at all came from. Not sure. But she was saying how everything that is related to witchcraft is bad and horrible, and that anybody who was associated with it is pretty much going against God and whatnot. And I was like, well, what about, because she even brought up the Harry Potter books. And I was like, well, what about if you're just reading them? And she was like, yes, even if you're just reading them, you're still condoning it, type of thing. And I was like, I really had a problem with that, because at the time I had no imagination. I might have read a few books, but just because I had to. And then it opened my imagination, and I couldn't see something that did such a wonderful thing to a child as broadening their imagination, how that could at all be associated with evil. But I rationalized it away and said, well, I can still read these, and God would be okay with that. And then there was my uncle, who brought up all the different versions of the Bible and how many times it's been translated,
Mm-hmm.
and where it started to where, we have it today and all this stuff. And I sat there and was like, no, that still is okay. But it edged at the back of my mind thinking, why are there so many different ones, why has it changed so much? And there's, so many different things, and the origins of Christianity itself coming from, Judaism and everything like that. I was like, why? I'll just push that aside. That doesn't.
Mm-hmm. So you've been talking for a little while now, and I just want to kind of summarize your experiences here, so we can kind of talk about it a little bit. So you were a believing Christian. Now you're kind of not, through like a variety of different personal experiences and the examinations and observations that came out of those experiences that kind of made you question a lot of things. And now here you are, frustrated, right? Is that a good summary?
That is a good summary.
Okay, cool. Let me ask you, why are you frustrated?
Why am I frustrated?
Yeah.
Because I know now that it's because of all the falsehoods that I once believed. I was really, whenever I've come to find out that they were false, regardless if they were known lies or not,
Mm-hmm.
They were false. And I just got frustrated with myself, really.
Mm.
And it really aggravated me. And and it was just, that's about it, is because I was so frustrated at myself for believing such falsehoods. And then even whenever I left the faith, I got swept up with the zeitgeist movement. And
let me ask you this, Frustrated. Do you think it's your fault that you believe the things that you did?
Almost to an extent, because whenever I got older and there was such, and of course, all growing up, there's such thing as the internet that has the information out there. I refused to even look into it. And so to an extent, as far as getting into the beliefs, I wouldn't say that I was at fault. It was just what I grew up in. And that's something that really couldn't be helped at the time. But as I got older, it really did start falling upon me because of the fact that I didn't care to do the research. I didn't want to do it because God did it.
Well, if that was your sincere belief that you didn't have to do the research, that God had things taken care of, I would almost make the case that, hey, maybe you should go a little easier on yourself, right?
Yeah.
Because if those are your sincerely held beliefs and you're acting on those beliefs, I'm not sure why you should expect that you would do any different.
Mainly because I know that it's funny because I was raised in these beliefs, but at the same time, I was also raised to use my brain.
Mm-hmm. Sure, but
I didn't use my brain whatsoever.
You've also mentioned the specific knowledge claims, though, that you couldn't have possibly known unless that information was given to you. I mean, for example, I don't blame people who lived in the 18th century for not knowing about nuclear fusion and that the sun happened, and that maybe some people thought that the sun is a giant ball of fire, because they're working with what they know at the time. And I mean, if you're just working with what you know, then you're just working with what you know. I don't know if there's any blame to be placed there.
Yeah, to go with this, Frustrated, and it's nice talking to you here. Frustrated is actually a friend of mine that's calling in. But with the regret things, I mean, I was a minister for 10 years. I preached the gospel, and I told people that this stuff was true. But I found myself out of the faith. Now, I could live a life filled with regrets and just be upset about that for the rest of my life, or I can realize that the same brain, because, the same brain I have now is the brain I had then. But I had knowledge withheld from me for years, where I was told, like you had, don't read the Harry Potter books because it's going to be send you down the path to witchcraft and you're going to be hellbound for it. If you're told these things, then there's going to be fear. And so I don't think you have to regret something that you were afraid of finding out. Once you actually did find it out for yourself and you've moved on from that, I think you're a great person.
Well, thanks, Iowan. You're actually you're a really good person as well. I always enjoy hanging out with you on your channel or wherever we may be at the moment.
Well, that was nice. I'm glad you got to share your experiences here, and I hope that maybe you can walk away feeling a little bit better about yourself and your self-esteem in that sense, that you can't just blame yourself for these things. I mean, I'm sure Godless Iowan can tell you, I mean, he preached to people, but I don't think he has any regrets about that.
No, the only thing that I have had any regrets over was the fact that I was a youth minister as well. But I was obviously a bad youth minister because all of the people that were in my youth group are now atheists. So they've left the church and they're done. So,
but anyway, we have one more caller that we want to get to, but thanks again for calling, Frustrated.
Oh yeah, not a problem. I love talking to y'all guys.
Cool. Well, we'll hopefully catch you some other time. Awesome. Well, that was really nice. And I hope those of you who are watching from the live stream as well also realize that if you come from a former believing background like the three of us do, that it's okay.
Yeah.
I certainly thought I had some regrets too from the youth that I used to talk to, but I also kind of believe that it was true in some capacity, so I'm just, people are going to act on what they believe is true, and that's just how the world works,
Well,
so it's hard to place that kind of blame on yourself.
And like with what Alexandria was saying earlier, she's very angry. It's okay if you're angry or if you're upset about the things that's happened because you've gone through a life of indoctrination. Sometimes it can take a while to get through those things to where you are at the point where I am, where I don't regret that anymore. It can take you some time.
Well, let's go ahead and get to our last caller here. So we have Peter from Holland who wants to talk about how atheists should speak to believers. Is that right, Peter?
Yes, that's correct. And I also wanted to say, Matt, you're doing a terrible job, as I told you.
Thank you, Peter.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I myself are extremely interested in religious beliefs. I spent pretty much all my time on YouTube talking to theists and trying to figure out what they believe and why. As I come from a country where we're pretty much atheist, I mean, almost 80% of the population here is atheist, or at least ticks the box for being a non-believer. There's a huge difference between American theists and Dutch theists. And so what I would want to ask, if because I followed you in your route, I saw the first video on Anthony Magnabosco's channel, where he interviewed you, and later on the follow-up, which I thought was awesome that you guys chose to do that. So what kind of tips would you give? I spoke with Anthony. He was a guest on our show a while back. What tips would you have? What would be your favorite approach when you're talking to a theist?
Yeah.
And what would you want to find out?
Yeah, so for me, the most important thing to recognize is every single human being on earth believes in something differently than the other person. Usually, right? So if we're talking about Christianity, that person is going to believe in Christianity being true for a lot of different reasons than this Christian and this Christian and this Christian and this Christian. And so if you try to approach it with these blanket statements and saying like, oh, this isn't true, it might not be as effective because it doesn't apply to them. But two, it's very impersonal and it doesn't seem like it's taking that person's individual experiences into account. And in my opinion, it's disrespectful also. That was one of the reasons why I wasn't an atheist or was very uncomfortable for calling myself an atheist for a long time, because I felt like there's a lot of people who don't take that into account, who didn't take my personal experiences of what I attributed to God very seriously. They didn't acknowledge that they were in some sense real. So first and foremost, I would say try to acknowledge that they're an individual person with individual human beings, and you have to be open to the idea that they could be right. And what I mean by that is, I'm not saying you should be a Christian, but I am saying that if you come into a conversation seeming like you're the know-it-all, why should they? I mean, because they're not going to have a conversation with you, because why should they have one if they don't feel like they're going to change your mind? Why would you want to talk to somebody that didn't think that, they were going to change their mind? It's the same thing. It goes both ways. So you also have to come into each conversation assuming that somebody else knows something you don't. Bill Nye has that quote that says, everybody in the world knows something you don't. And I think that's, just my general approach. And also, don't waste your time on people that you don't think that you can make progress with just to make a stink with them. I don't know. I think that's the other thing I'd say. I mean, like, it's just going to give you a bad day. And it's not your job necessarily to change everybody's minds at once to what you believe. It is your job to be, I think, as a humanist, I think it's my position to be as responsible as I can with my own beliefs, and to engage with other people's beliefs as responsibly as I can. But that doesn't mean going around telling people that they're wrong all the time. It just means in certain circumstances, I have to demonstrate why I'm right. And in other circumstances, I have to question why they think they're right. You know, so it's kind of different situations. What's your take on this, Godless Iowan?
I was going to say, basically, to mirror you, there are certain people that I tend to not talk to all that often. And that would be people who are very much fundamentalists, set in their faith, presuppositionalists. Because I don't think that there's much of an argument that can be had with those people. I think that it tends to just run around in circles, as we saw earlier tonight. But when I go about talking with someone that's at least willing to have a discussion, what I like to do first is to get them to lay out exactly what it is they believe, because there is a lot of moving of the goalposts when you're talking with people about their faith. And so if you can get them to set down 2 or 3 ideas that they are dead set on, this is what God is to them, or this is what their faith is to them, and then discuss those parts, you can have a very good conversation. But if you're constantly having to chase after the goalposts as they move them, it's not going to work out.
Mm-hmm.
No, I'd fully agree, and I'd be one of the persons that you'd rather not talk to. I already know that, Matt. I'm not here to plug my own thing, so I won't mention any names. But we have a certain name for our show. The reason for that name is that we want to make atheists at least a little bit more accessible, and show people that we're not the devil-possessed beings that is for a big part still the view of people in the United States. And so my view on all of this is that if you can find at least some kind of common ground, and maybe you don't have to be actually friends, although I have made friends through talks like this, from Christians to even a flat earther.
I think that's really important, Peter, to destigmatize atheism, because like we had the caller earlier who was terrified talking to us because she felt like it was sinful in some way. Mm-hmm. And so I think it's very important to have these discussions.
Yeah, and I also think that so if you have a more friendly approach, you are a lot more likely to have people at least be willing to rethink their position and have a discussion about that. Because so my co-host is a former fundamentalist street preacher, and I have had very long talks with her. And she told me that her Christianity was her entire identity. So when she stopped believing, when she started doubting, when she stopped believing, she had to reinvent herself. She lost her entire identity, which was pretty much dictated by the belief she held, by the church she went to. And I don't think that a lot of the atheists, at least the atheists that I've seen online, realize that there are people like that out there, and that you might, just by simple questions, scare the living daylights out of them. Mm-hmm. Because if you grew up in that particular faith, it is a lot more than just a belief.
I agree.
And I think at times that...
Well, I don't know if it's just more than a belief, but yeah, I agree with you fundamentally, I think. Yeah, I think we often don't take account of the sensitivity that these issues require, because as a non-believer, the fact, or I'm not going to say fact, the idea that God isn't real, that concept, is an incredibly scary thing for a majority of the population. And like, we eat that for breakfast, right? Because we don't care anymore. We've kind of grown out of that. But like, I feel like there's a lot of people that don't, either they've never experienced having that belief in the first place, or it's been so long since they've had that belief that often the sensitivity required to have those conversations isn't as well accounted for as it should be. And we often have a temptation to tell people what's true and what's not true in the middle of those conversations. And while we may be right, there's a difference between being right and being convincing.
That's right.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
We don't take account of that enough in our movement, I think.
Well, and here's a great way to do that, at least with me. If you haven't been a theist for a while and you're not as sensitive as you used to be, go back and look at your old Facebook posts from when you were a theist. I've got tons about with me.
Oh yeah,
promoting the same stuff that I'm combating against today. So I can go back and say, this was me not that long ago. And it can change the way that I react to people in the press.
Yeah, we still need a mug with your last post on social media before you became an atheist.
Mm-hmm. Well, Peter,
maybe you can fill in Dan what that was.
Peter, thanks.
To scare him.
Thanks for calling in, and we really appreciate it. We're going to try to wrap up the stream now. It is 5:30 where we're at, but thanks again for calling.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And I want to add a great show. I think it's going to be a great addition to the community, and I've subscribed, and I will try and advertise your show and your channel. So more people need to know about this.
Got another one. Hear that, Mark? We're bringing them in. That's awesome. That's exciting. Yeah, today is 1, tomorrow is 100, and then 1,000 in the whole world. We subscribe to Truth Wanted. Awesome. Thanks again, Peter.
And real quick to tell you what he was talking about, my very last act as a religious believer before I finally said, you know what, I don't believe this stuff, was sending out God is not dead to all of my friends on Facebook.
Oof.
Yeah, I'll admit it.
That's rough.
I know.
Ugh. Okay, well, you got me beat. I'll tell you that. Folks, that about wraps it up for Truth Wanted today. If you like the show, please send me a tweet out on my Twitter at ObjectivelyDan and say that you liked it. Give me some feedback. Tell me what you liked, what you didn't like. Also, be sure to subscribe to the Godless Iowan as well. He's over there. Here. There we go. He makes great content as well. He interviews all kinds of people and he talks about his own experiences. It's a really incredible story. This show is produced here in the Free Thought Library in Austin by the Atheist Community of Austin. So if you like other shows like The Atheist Experience and Talk Heathen, you should go check those out too. They're also made here in this studio. Truth Wanted will return back to a regular test schedule on Friday nights. However, next week I will be out of town on a trip and we will not be streaming. But we will return again probably after that. And next month will be our official premiere date for the show. So look forward to that when we have some more information on it. Godless Iowan, is there anything you wanted to say before we wrap things up?
I would just say thank you, folks, for having me on. This has been awesome. It was a great experience, and I wish this show the best in the future. I think it's going to explode.
Oh, thank you. That's really, really nice of you to say. If you want more updates on this show, again, follow me on Twitter at ObjectivelyDan, or you can join our new Truth Wanted Facebook page. And it's really exciting. We're going to probably have lots more conversations on there and stuff, and also more announcements and things. If you want to make a post, go ahead and make a post. We can start generating new content right away. So yeah, that's about it for today, folks. Thanks again for joining us for Truth Wanted. Remember, the truth might be out there. Maybe. We don't know. We're going to figure it out. Thanks again, guys. We'll see you next time.